I'm going to introduce myself again. I'm a grateful believer in Lord Jesus Christ, in recovery from anger control and sexual addiction. My name's Dale. So, I was born in Upland, California, a state that I hate, but I was the second oldest of 4 children and the only boy. When we moved to Eureka, California, and then to Rancho Cordova, California. My first childhood memories are from Rancho. While living there, I remember attending kindergarten and participating in a carnival show that we put on. I did the balancing beam act, but I had to do it with one arm in a sling because I had injured my shoulder. I remember that while living there, I had 2 foster brothers, Mikey and Larry. They were basically the same age as me. From Rancho, we moved to Winlock, Washington. We lived on a farm and had horses, a pony, chickens, ducks, and rabbits. I have very fond memories of living there and playing in the barn with my cousins and friends. Unfortunately, this is also where I have my first memories of being teased and bullied. I had a cowboy hat that I wore everywhere, including school. I was teased by other kids because of my hat. They would take my hat, push me around, and play keep away with it. I would also get into trouble with the teacher for wearing my hat in class. I was really sad when my parents bought a house and we moved into the city of Chehalis. We had to get rid of most of the animals. We did keep a few chickens and ducks. Moving also meant going to a new school, but the teasing and bullying continued. Now it was mostly verbal. I was the new kid and a little overweight. They gave me the nickname of Dale the Whale. Throughout this whole time, my family was involved in a church called Apostolic Faith. It was a very legalistic church. We went to church on Wednesdays, Fridays, and twice on Sunday. My parents were involved with jail and street ministries. My dad was a Sunday school teacher and counselor for summer youth camp. My mom played violin in the orchestra and sang in the choir. Our whole life revolved around the church. Except for the teasing, I had a happy life. I spent a lot of time with my dad. We went hunting, fishing, frogging. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's actually spearing bullfrogs. So, love frog legs. We did a lot of camping. During the summer, I would often go to work with him. He worked for the city water department. Then suddenly, at the age of 10, my whole world collapsed. My parents got divorced. I went to live with my dad, and my sister stayed with my mom. Because the church was so legalistic, they considered divorce a major sin. So my parents were no longer welcome there. However, I continued to go. That is, until my great aunt called me one day and said that because my parents were sinners, that I was no longer welcome. Exodus 20, verse 5, the children will suffer the sins of the parents. All my friends were kids from church, and they were told they couldn't associate with me, even at school. Now I was really lost. My family was torn apart. I wasn't allowed at the church, and my friends all rejected me. I started to see my parents in a different light. I would go to spend time with my mother and sisters, and I watched my mother go from the prim and proper church lady to someone who drank, smoked, and partied. I loved and idolized my father, and I knew he had a bad temper. But during this time, I saw outbursts of anger like I'd never seen. I also found out he was quite the ladies' man. He dated several women until he met and married my stepmother. This was both exciting and challenging. I was excited because my dad and I moved to her house. She lived on a small ranch, raised Arabian horses. There were 2 houses. We lived in one, and my new grandparents lived in the other one. I was back in my happy place with the horses. Unfortunately, I clashed a lot with my stepmother. She was only 11 years older than me and was an only child. She had no idea how to be a parent. She also disagreed a lot with what my dad allowed me to do. One specific example is that I was allowed to keep my guns in my room. I came home from school one day and found one of my guns was missing. I also noticed that the others were unloaded. I asked her about it. She admitted she had taken my gun and refused to return it until my dad got home. I met him in the driveway and told him what she had done. When he asked her about it, she said she knew I had my guns in there, but didn't like that they were loaded. She had taken the one because she couldn't figure out how to unload it. He knew that I kept them loaded. He told her to give me back my gun and to never touch them again. This just deepened the rift between us. My stepmother soon gave birth to my fourth sister, and then finally I got a brother, even if he was 13 years younger than me. The move to the ranch also meant changing schools. I got involved in sports. I played football and wrestled, but the sport I really excelled at was track. I was a sprinter. My coach said I was his ticket to fame. He said I was going to the Olympics, that is, until I impact fractured both my knees. I was jumping a dirt bike and landed with my feet on the ground. When I showed up to school on crutches, I thought my coach was going to kill me. Unfortunately, I never regained the speed I had before the injury. I was still the target of some bullies. One in particular was relentless in picking on me. Finally, one day, something snapped. I told him to meet me outside after class. When I walked outside, he was waiting there taunting me. As I approached, I never even broke my stride. I dropped my books and I hit him. All that anger from the past bullying went into that swing. I hit him once, he hit the ground out cold. I picked up my books and went to my next class. Something changed in me that day. I learned that violence was an option and that I could stand up to the bullies. Unfortunately, this was the beginning of my struggle with anger and control. Due to conflicts with my stepmother, I moved to my mother's house in California halfway through my sophomore year. This was a huge change for me. I went from a small junior-senior high school with 250 students to a high school that had over 1,200 students. Thankfully, there was a large agriculture department with FFA and a bunch of cowboys that I fit in with. But this is where I started to get involved with partying and drinking. It seemed like there was some kind of party almost every weekend. If we couldn't find a party to go to, we would make our own. I was 16 and hanging around with my friends Bob and George. They were 19 and 20. Bob had a brother in the Navy. He got us both on a Tiger cruise. This is a recruiting cruise that takes family members on a Navy ship to get them interested in joining. Bob's brother sponsored him, and one of his friends sponsored me. He lied and said I was his brother-in-law. There was a lot of drinking on that trip. Bob's parents owned a bar and would pay for us to do their liquor inventory. We would help ourselves to some of the alcohol while doing the inventory. Bob, George, and I drank a lot. We all wanted 4x4 trucks but couldn't afford them, so we decided to steal them. Long story short, we started stealing Ford trucks. The police raided George's house and arrested both of them for grand theft auto. Thankfully, I was not there at the time. They kept my name out of it. They both ended up serving time for it. My junior year, I enrolled in a mechanic apprenticeship program. I went to school in the morning and worked as an apprentice in the afternoon. For my senior year, I decided to move back to my dad's house in Washington so that I could graduate with my friends there. The drinking continued, albeit less frequently. I didn't have as much access to it. I'd had a few girlfriends, but I got involved in my first serious relationship. I took a job as a milker at a dairy. So along with school, I worked 7 days a week. Halfway through my senior year, I moved out of my dad's house and rented a trailer with two of my friends. This quickly became party central. We all worked this different schedule, so there were always friends hanging around. The drinking was out of control. We did a lot of stupid stuff that usually involved alcohol. For example, we all got involved in demolition derby. We decided to drive our derby cars from the fairgrounds back to the house one night. Mind you, these cars are not street legal. There's no glass in them, there's no lights in them, and it's pitch black. The cops spotted us and tried to pull us over. The three of us split up and managed to elude him and made it back to the house. At this time, our neighbor drove a semi-truck delivering furniture all over the Northwest. I started riding with him on some of his deliveries. On one trip to Oregon, we met a couple of girls, and I cheated on my girlfriend. This would soon come back on me. After I turned 18, I quit my job at the dairy and moved back to California to work with my stepfather's construction company. I started hanging around with my friend Mitch that I had met during the mechanic apprenticeship program. His brothers were in the Navy and were talking to him about joining. I was already interested from my experience on the Tiger Cruise. We decided to join on the buddy system. So on December 7th, 1980, I joined the Navy. For those that you know, that's anniversary of Pearl Harbor. While I was in boot camp, my girlfriend broke up with me because one of my former roommates told her that I had cheated on her in Oregon. He wanted to date her. This was the first of many relationships that I would destroy with infidelity. I was chosen as a squad leader for my boot camp company. This was my first taste of power and authority. After boot camp, I went through 2 years of electronics and computer repair schools. I was always at the top of my class. I excelled in the Navy and advanced in rank quickly. I was a first-class petty officer by the time I was 23. While this was good for my Navy career, it had a negative effect on me. The higher the rank, the more power and control. The Navy taught me to take control. I would have tried to apply this to all aspects of my life. When I could not control a situation, I would become angry. In my anger, I would lash out violently, usually verbally, but occasionally physically. My escape would be alcohol and sex. Even though I did not attend church on a regular basis, I still believed in Christ. I would attend church on Easter and Christmas. When I was stationed in Pensacola, Florida, I attended an Easter service. The whole service centered around raising money to make improvements to the church to attract more people so that they could be the largest congregation in Pensacola. Nothing was mentioned about Christ. All I saw was more hypocrisy. It would be the last time I attended church for over 20 years. After 2 failed marriages, both plagued with infidelity, I reunited with my high school girlfriend and we soon married. I had 2 children, she had 2 children, then we had 1 together. When Clinton was elected as president, he decided to reduce the size of the military. They were offering large separation bonuses for people to accept an early discharge. I was stationed in Alaska and decided I didn't want to leave. After 13 years of active duty, I took the discharge and the bonus. Part of this separation package included preferential enlistment into the reserves. However, when I went to enlist, I was told there were no openings for my job. I used the money for a down payment on a house and took a job driving a tow truck. A year later, I went into partnership with some family members and bought a bar. I was supposed to be a silent partner, but soon had to quit driving to work at the bar full time. Even though the bar was making good money, it was being spent just as fast. Soon my mortgage was 4 months behind, so I went back to driving tow truck just to pay my bills. After a couple of years, I completely pulled out of the bar. Eventually, I took a job in the service department at the local Ford dealer. Through all of this, I struggled with my lack of control, and my anger continued to spin out of control. The worse my financial struggles got, the more I struggled with feelings of inadequacy and failure, and the more I tried to escape through alcohol, sex, and porn. After a few years, I was finally able to enlist in the reserves, but I had to change jobs. Instead of repairing computers, I joined based on my mechanical experience, became a heavy equipment mechanic in the Seabees. Along with the job change, I had to take a reduction in rank. When I left active duty, I was selected for chief. I was told that once I went in the reserves, all I had to do was take the chief test again and I would automatically get it. However, because of the job change, the most they would offer me was a reduction to second-class petty officer. This was hard to swallow. I had worked hard to get my rank and was proud of it. But more importantly, I wanted back in a position where I could feel like I was in control. On the surface, I looked like a good person. I was a loving husband and father. I had a decent job, was in the Navy Reserves. I coached football and wrestling, but it was all a facade. Inside, I was spiraling. When I looked in the mirror, I really didn't like what I saw. The infidelity had continued into this marriage, along with attempted escapes through sex and alcohol. The more I spiraled, the more depraved I became. Eventually, my actions were exposed, and I was forced to face the reality of what I had done. I was devastated. My whole world was crumbling around me. My pride would not allow me to face the humiliation of the consequences for my action. But the worst of all was that I had torn my family apart, that which I loved most. I decided to take the easy way out. I took a .45 cal pistol and drove to a gravel pit I knew about 75 miles away. I pointed the .45 at the side of my head and pulled the trigger. The gun fired, and I stood there in disbelief. I was an expert rifle and pistol shot in the Navy. How could I miss from 2 inches away? I pointed the pistol to the ground and pulled the trigger. It functioned perfectly, and rocks flew. There was nothing wrong with the pistol or the ammo. I had no rational explanation for why I was still alive. Still in a daze, I drove back to town. I decided I need to get away from the situation, so I flew to my mom's house in Arizona. After I got there, I went into a severe depression. My mother convinced me to go to the doctor, who said I was suffering from anxiety. So he gave me Xanax, just what I needed, and another escape. The depression just got worse. My mother decided we should go to church. She hadn't been to church since my parents got divorced. I didn't really want to go, but I agreed to go just to appease her. We went to a church close to the house, but all I saw was more hypocrisy. All they talked about was money. Their big thing was raising money to buy a Cadillac as an anniversary present for the pastor and his wife. That was pretty much all they talked about. On the recommendation of some friends, we attended a different church the following Sunday. When we walked in, things just felt different. Can't really explain it, but it had an effect on me. After the service, my mom asked one of the pastors to pray for me. The following week, I started having seizure-like episodes. I would get uncontrollable body shakes. I would be aware of my surroundings, but everything was kind of hazy. I was laying in the recliner during one of these episodes when Mom decided to place my grandfather's Bible on my chest. When she did, the shaking stopped and things cleared up. I took the Bible off my chest and put it on the end table. The shaking started again. She put the Bible back on my chest and it stopped again. As the week progressed, the episodes continued. I became more agitated. I went to get my pistol, but the case was empty. My mother had hidden it. She had also hidden the keys to the cars. I found the keys to the motorhome, but she had grabbed them. We were in the driveway struggling for the keys, and she was screaming for help. I let go of the keys and started walking down the street. It was 120 degrees, and I was barefoot, but felt no pain. Someone had called the cops. They showed up and detained me. They thought I was on PCP trip, so they called an ambulance. They put me on the gurney, but I managed to get loose and tried to run. They caught me, put me back on the gurney, but this time they used arm and leg restraints and head restraints. At the hospital, all the tests came back negative. They wanted to put me on a psych hold, but my mom convinced them to let me go home. My mother would later say that when she looked at me, she didn't recognize me. All she saw was evil. The next weekend, she asked if I wanted to go to church, and I said yes. I can't tell you. I can't tell you what the sermon was about. I just sat and cried through the whole service. When they did an altar call at the end of the service, I ran down front and gave my life to Christ. Excuse me. I was not expecting this. started meeting with a counselor at the church, and he recommended I check out a program they had called Celebrate Recovery. My first response was that I don't need recovery. I'm not an alcoholic or an addict. Sure, I used alcohol as an escape, but I wasn't an alcoholic. Thank you, brother. He explained it was for more than just drugs and alcohol, as I soon found out. Working the steps and attending small groups helped me to start processing through the trauma of my past and get on the road to recovery. I got baptized and then had the privilege of baptizing my mom. I knew that I was under investigation in Alaska and had contacted an attorney. He called and informed me that an arrest warrant had been issued. I bought a plane ticket and flew back to Alaska, turned myself in. I know that if it wasn't for Christ, I would have continued to run. But I knew I wasn't going alone. Christ was going with me. I was sentenced to 10 years with 3 suspended. After I was sentenced, I requested to be sent to Arizona. Alaska had about 1,000 inmates housed at a private prison close to my mom's house. They had a Christian program there called the Transformational Living Community. Soon after I joined the program, I was selected as a team coordinator. I then cycled through as coordinator for each of the 6 teams. After about 6 months, I was chosen as a senior coordinator and chaplain's assistant. I had the privilege to serve in this capacity for 2.5 years. It was awesome to watch Christ work in transforming prisoners' lives. The TLC helped me to understand that leadership is about responsibility, not control. After I was released, I returned to Arizona on Interstate Compact. It was an interstate transfer with probation. When I got there, initially I started doing handyman work with one of the mentors from the program down there. Then I opened my own auto repair business. I told Christ that if this was what he wanted me to do, he would have to provide the work. I didn't do any advertising, but soon I had more work than I can handle. My business and life verse is Philippians 4:19, and my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. After 3 years, God called me back to Alaska. I had returned to Alaska for an appeal hearing and stayed with some friends. While I was here, I attended a church with my friends. There was a guest speaker that prophesied over me that God had plans to use me here in Alaska. I tried to dismiss this because I knew that I was going back to Arizona. However, God made it clear that he had plans for me here. I returned to Arizona and made plans to move. People thought I was crazy for closing a successful business and moving. I returned to Alaska and immediately went back to work driving tow truck for the same company where I had worked before. While in Arizona, I started dating Tricia. When I moved back to Alaska, she came with me. We started attending and serving at the church where I was prophesied over. It was there that we were married on December 31st, 2010. I continued to study and grow in Christ and was ordained as a pastor in 2016. In 2017, I was released from probation 5 months early. I had completed 10 years of probation without a single violation. Everyone said that was impossible, but I give all the credit to God and the changes that he had made in me. To do that, it took 2 things, humility and submission, the same things that I had to do to surrender to Christ. The same year, the church we were attending went through a split, and soon most of the congregation left. God was telling me to leave, but I resisted because I was committed to supporting my friends and a pastor. Finally, I listened, but had no direction as to where to go. I was talking to my boss about it, and he invited us to attend his church, so we did. One Sunday, I noticed a sign about community outreach. Listed on it was Cowboy Church. This piqued my interest. Usually when we leave the church, we turn left to go home, but today we turned right to go to Palmer. As we did, I noticed a sign on the end of one of the church buildings that read Cowboy Church. When we got to Palmer, the reader board at the fairgrounds read, Cowboy Church meets here today, 3 times in one day. I took this as a sign. I started attending Cowboy Church, but I didn't even know it existed. And immediately felt at home. I was back in the cowboy environment. I soon learned that the couple that ran Cowboy Church were wanting to move to Oklahoma. They were planning on shutting down the ministry because nobody wanted to take over. God was telling me to step up, but I argued with him. I told God there's no way with my past that would work. He didn't listen. Eventually, I surrendered and took over as pastor of Cowboy Church. One of the benefits of Cowboy Church was I was back around horses again, and I was blessed to get one of my own. He's an American Mustang. Love that horse. Don't get to spend enough time with him, but I love him. Things were going good in my job and ministry, but at home, things were not. My wife was addicted to pills and alcohol. She thought she was hiding it from me, but I knew. Even though I made decent money, we were always broke. I opened a separate bank account, and she started stealing money out of my wallet. Since we'd arrived in Alaska, she had trouble keeping a job. Finally, I had enough and told her I wanted a separation. She went to her son's house in Arizona. She didn't seem to want to address her issues or work on our relationship, so I decided to get a divorce. I filled out the paperwork and sent it to her. She signed it and sent it back. However, God would not allow me to file it. Just before Thanksgiving 2020, she called and asked if it was too late. She wanted to try to work things out. I agreed under the condition that she gets treatment for herself. She came back to Alaska and entered a treatment program. She also started attending Celebrate Recovery. I attended a few meetings with her, and shortly after her 1-year anniversary, I surprised her at CR meeting and asked her to renew our vows. After 3 years as pastor of Cowboy Church, I resigned due to attacks on the ministry because of my past. I became more involved in Celebrate Recovery and Messenger Christian Ministries. Today, I am blessed to serve as an associate pastor with Messenger Christian Ministries. I'm a member of the worship team and am part of the leadership team for CR. My marriage is stronger than ever. I have restored a relationship with some of my children and am praying for reconciliation with the others. It's truly a blessing to spend time with some of my grandchildren every summer. I would love to say that the last 23 years of recovery have been easy, but that is not the case. There have been many struggles and trials, successes and failures. There have been times that I asked God why, but there's also been a lot of blessings. We own a house. All of our vehicles are paid off. We actually have money in the bank. I owe all this to God. I know that I'm still a work in progress, and I'm thankful that God has not given up on me. He has been faithful and carried me through it all. Deuteronomy 31:8, the Lord himself goes before you, and he will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Whether you're new to recovery or have been coming for a while, remember that there's no quick fix. Recovery is a journey. At times, recovery will be painful, but it is worth it. There will also be lots of joy. Don't be discouraged when others only see your past. God only sees who you are now, and he's the only one that matters. Thank you for letting me share my story. God bless. Yeah, I was not expecting to get emotional during that, but our story matters. No matter what your story is, our stories may be different, but we're all the same. So if you haven't given your testimony, It's a powerful thing, not just for those that are hearing it, but for yourself. So I encourage you to do it. Everybody, as Angie said, if you've completed a step study, this is actually the final step of that step study, is doing your testimony. So, there's been a whole bunch of guys in a row now. So ladies, we're calling you out, all right? We're flipping the script because it was the women saying, hey guys, well guess what? We've stepped up. There's been a whole bunch of us. So time for some ladies, right? So there's still some men that can do theirs too. So, but I know if you haven't done a step study and you're interested, we're going to be starting new ones in the fall. I think, after the summer's over, because I think after hunting season, guaranteed. So you got to get that in there. So, yeah, we look forward to seeing everybody in step studies. That's where the real, feet hit the pavement, man. That's where the work begins. I mean, this is a good start, coming to large groups, small groups, but step studies where you really dig into the meat of things. And so I encourage you to consider doing one. So if you guys would stand with me, we're going to do our serenity prayer. Mike's not here, so I'm going to fill in for him as far as the forgiveness, I want everybody to take a moment and think about forgiveness. Forgiveness is an anchor around your neck. It's going to drag you to the bottom, right? It's a cancer. It's slowly eating away at you. If you haven't forgiven somebody, if you're harboring unforgiveness, it's just going to tear you apart. You can't be free. If you harboring, if somebody has hurt you, offended you, and you haven't forgiven them, you're still allowing them to hurt you. And it's not going to stop until you forgive. Maybe that somebody is yourself. It took me a lot of years to forgive myself. Right? It was the hardest thing to do because me better than anybody else, I knew the damage that I had done. But I had to take that step and forgive myself so that I can start the healing process. So everybody take a moment. Who do you need to forgive? Is it yourself, somebody from your past, somebody from today? Did somebody offend you today? Take a moment and think about that. God, grant me the serenity We're going to break up. The ladies will meet in the fellowship hall for a small group. Men will meet in the first door on the left down this hallway. You take a quick break, grab a snack, and we'll see you there.